And here we go. Well, as I stated, hopefully you have all taken a look at the video from that was for our class on Tuesday. There's a couple of new pieces of information I'm adding, so make sure that you are paying close attention to some due dates. So first thing is I have a couple of reminders. The first one is that on September 2nd, you are required to have completed the orientation quiz number 2. Now that's really important because the information that's contained in that you're being quizzed on is directly relevant to a next assignment, which is your discussion forums. Now you are going to be able to select, remember this is part of your self-directed learning, either discussion forum A or discussion forum B. You don't have to do both. Sometimes even within the discussion forums, you might see that there are some options as well, sometimes not. So read the directions very carefully. Your first response to a discussion forum, you will have to do before you can see what anybody else has written. And your first posting of your discussion forum needs to be in concert with what the textbook is saying, is what we're reading in the book as well as the lectures. So as the quiz helps you to understand and the information to prepare you for the quiz, you must reference the textbook by using terms such as the ones I'm going to be using today in class, the theories. So for instance, I'm going to talk about maxims today, and those are examples of theories. And you also need to, when appropriate, use and refer to the practices that either I give you as lessons in the class or that are explained in the textbook. All right, so you need to have a real interaction with the textbook as you feel like you are personalizing the information and applying it to your own real life. But you got to do more than that. Not only do you have to use these correctly as you're learning them, but you also have to give a source citation. So let's say that in your journal or in your discussion forum, you're going to talk about the maxims. All right, and you're going to refer to the pages in the textbook, and maybe you want to talk specifically about the maxim of the fact that communication is not repeatable. That is located on page 31. So you're going to have to say maxim com is not repeatable. You have the page number reference after it, and then you are talking about it in your discussion forum, in your responses to your peers, discussion forums, etc. So as part of your critical thinking in this course, and this is what we do throughout all communication studies, is you are looking to make what we call connections between real life and the concepts. Or you're making connections between your life experience and one of your classmates' life experiences, right? And we're also looking for you to make extensions, okay? Both of them. So an extension might be, that's right, somebody may have posted in the initial post an explanation that maxim on page 31 talks the fact that it's not repeatable. But then Ms. Kruska also in a lecture stated that you cannot not communicate, all right, in a lecture on 8/20, what's today, the 7th? On 8/27. Okay. So that is making a connection, but you are extending what your classmate wrote about by bringing in additional information. So we're going to be doing this for all the discussion forums. And that's why I don't have you doing a lot of discussion forums. Instead, I want you to do meaningful discussion forums, ones that are really helping you to integrate the information for true learning. And also, of course, for your self-directed learning on the areas that are of greatest importance to you. Okay? So the first discussion forum is due September 9th. That's the date that you are required to put your first post in. That's the one that's in response to the prompts that I provide as your instructor. Then that gives people enough time to read what others have written, and then you can respond by September 13th. And when you respond, in order for you to get maximum points, you're going to need to remember to do this in your response as well as in your initial posting. I'm going to go over to the monitor for now to see if there are any questions. So does anybody want to raise your hand or ask a clarifying question, or does that make sense? So everybody's good? All right. And if you're shy about asking a question, you can always send me an email for follow-up, and I'll clarify more. Or you can always schedule a Zoom meeting with me, and I will be happy to explain more. All right, good. So that's what we mean by connections and extensions. And that's also what we mean by citing your source. So everything you talk about in this class, you need to draw back into a term, a theory, or a practice that you're learning in the textbook and or in the lessons that we teach on videos and in the class. All right. So in our last session on Tuesday, when hopefully you watched the video, we talked about the functions of interpersonal communication. And there are 4. The first one is pretty much an obvious one, and that is the P's of interpersonal communication, the psychological and the physiological. In order for us to survive and therefore to thrive and to continuously develop, etc., so that we are helping ourselves and others, we got to take care of our minds. We have to take care of our mental well-being, as well as, of course, we have to take care of our physical well-being, so that those things are givens and they are critically important. And actually a lot of communication is going to be centered around that as a function of language, to help us survive, to help us thrive, to help us take care of our mental well-being, to our psychology, our egos, etc. All right. I also talked about the function of instrumental, that there is an instrumental aspect of what we need to cover or talk about so that we are getting things done. All right, we are achieving our little mini goals and our long-term goals with the help of others or either through our own assertiveness, right? So it's got to be instrumental. We got to do accomplishments. We got to get things done, whether it's at work, in the school, in the family, in the home, etc. The next type of function that we talked about is what's known as relational or relational management. Now that is really important, and I'm going to dive into that even in more detail today as I talk about compliance gaining strategies as well as compliance resistance strategies. So I'm going to really get into that a little bit more. But what we're looking for as we explain that relationship is that it's really important to maintain the kind of relationship that you want, that's mutually satisfying, that's healthy mutually for both people, that is, is for the good of yourself and others, and that there's an equal give and take, so that you're not always the giver, which can affect your negative self well-being, but you're not always, the giver. I mean, because that's like exhausting. So relationship elements are going to be very important in terms of why we have interpersonal communication. The last function is what's known as self-presentation. Your book has a whole long section about image. Okay? How do you project yourself to the outside world? What clothes do you choose to wear? How do you choose to wear your hair? Are you using masks or not? Are you, do you have beautiful tattoos? What is it about how you present yourself that is valuable in what's also known as your identity? All right, because sometimes the identity that, for instance, is assigned to you at birth is not the identity of gender identification that you embrace or that you want to live or you want other people to have about you. And so you can change elements about who you are so that your identity is going to really be what you want, all right? And you can manage it. So identity management is very important. Some of it is very purposeful. Some of it is unintentional. And we'll talk about some of those a little bit, right? So given that that's the review of our functions, let's dive into strategies and tactics. So I encourage you to open up your textbooks, your laptops or your phones, and follow along with me on page 28. All right, page 28. Give you a moment to do that. Page 28. Page 28, you're going to see a large bar that goes across the page that says common tactics used for compliance gaining. But I also want you to recognize that these are for compliance resisting. All right? So let's look over here at the difference between those words. Compliance gaining means that you're trying to get somebody to do what you want. Obvious. Resisting is to protect yourself and prevent yourself from getting sucked in and doing something that's not good for you or that you just don't want to do, etc. So both of these can be played back and forth, and that is part of what's important for relationship management, setting boundaries, setting protocols, etc. All right, so let's look at each one of those, and I'm going to shorten them and give them to you in short format, and then we'll explain each one. So the first one is to offer a reward. Some of this may seem so obvious, right? Well, this is one that's used a lot. In fact, that's probably why it's number one first. So offering somebody a reward to do something that you want them to do, it involves employment. You go to work, you're doing what the employer wants you to do, and they reward you by giving you a salary or a paycheck, etc. All right? So some of it is just every day taking care of business. But it can also be used, so you think about your parents, all right? And a parent may use the reward that if you do all of your chores in the week without hassle, yes, I'll give you your allowance. Or if you are on the job and you have a job that has a bonus structure, and let's say that you manage to not have any customer complaints within a 3-month period, then you might get a reward, a bonus, a cash bonus, or extra time off, or something like that. So this is used as a very positive reinforcement of behaviors. Let's put a little plus sign next to that. Because number 2 then is to threaten punishment. Even notice the difference in words. Offer, you want it or not, give or take, it's no problem. But the threaten is really moving into a word choice that basically says you do this or else, right? Because that's what's happening with the threatening of punishment. The unstated element is or else, all right? And again, this is used in parenting, this is used by students. So for instance, a punishment, threaten a punishment is if you had not completed that orientation quiz number 1, per the state of North Carolina, per our registrar, I had to drop you. So the punishment, some people sometimes will say consequence of either complying or not complying, all right, has an or else connotation. And obviously this is going to be negative. Now here is where it starts to become important. As a business person, I have been teaching. I teach in our business department and I teach business communication, but I've also been teaching business communication in training workshops in the business world forever. And one of the things that as a consultant I still do today, when somebody comes in and they say, you know, Kathy, I really need you to analyze this particular work group because I have a problem that's costing me money. So here are the problems. I have a lot of employees who are hired and quit, or the supervisor fires them. So I have a lot of turnover, and as you know, turnover is very expensive. Or maybe it's a, the client says, and not only is the turnover high, but when they leave, I have had people file a lot of unemployment claims. And 1 or 2 of them could not be justified, and I had to pay unemployment. Another one, because the supervisor didn't go through the proper steps. Another problem in this same work team is that the productivity has gone down since we promoted this supervisor who's in charge now. So obviously something's wrong. Find out what's wrong. Well, that's what I'm going to do. As a communication consultant, I'm going to go in and observe. I'm going to interview people. I'm going to spend probably a week or 2 there listening and looking at what is said and what is not said, what is done and what is not done. And that's where I'm going to find out a lot about what's going on here. So many of you have probably heard of the phrase that some people look at a glass that may have some water in it, and some people will look at it and say, yeah, that glass is about half full. Well, those people fall under this category. They have what's known as a positive worldview. They're looking at people, they're looking at circumstances, and they're looking at situations, and they lead. Okay, so now we're talking about leadership. Okay? They lead by offering and giving rewards to employees and to customers and to colleagues, etc. So they work to have an environment through words and actions that's extremely positive. It's full, all right? So, but I'm also going to, in that situation scenario that I just described, I guarantee that the problem is that that supervisor has a world view that this glass is empty and the world is against that supervisor, and that employees can't be trusted, and that employees are out to take, and they're really not that good employees anyway, all right? We can hear that in what people say and how they say it. And I just spent a time shadowing it. Oh my gosh, do I get data, all right? So a person who threatens, well, you got to do this or you're going to get fired. You got to do this or I'm going to take you off the day shift. You got to do this or blah, 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 blah. Nobody wants to work for that kind of a leader, manager, supervisor, what have you. And there's some teachers like that too, where it's, punitive, punish, versus, all right. In fact, I'm going to give you guys all some extra credit opportunity coming up in the next day or so. I like to give extra credit opportunity. I want everybody to get an A in my class. I am a positive, I like to think, a teacher who provides an environment that's very positive, that's very productive, that is very safe and fun for employees and students to be in. All right? So, any questions about that? Oh yeah, some of you know. You've had coaches, you've had teachers, you've had parents. Their worldview is very negative. Grandparents, the list goes on. All right, so now the third item is what we call using expertise. Okay, and basically that is a statement or a claim or implication that a person knows better. And that's what I do every day when I come in to teach. I'm old. I have a master's degree in communication. I was a senior vice president of organizational development. I had 1,000 employees under me. I had 6 different plant manufacturing plus 2 regional offices plus 1 main home office that I was responsible for, blah, blah, blah. I know a little bit. I've been around that block a few times. I have seen some really crappy stuff, okay? But I've also seen some really good stuff. Some really good stuff. So, which I'll share with you later in terms of leadership. So, what I bring into here is expertise based on education, life experiences, work experiences, etc. So I'm going to use that to try and persuade you, okay, compliance gaining, to practice some of these things that I'm teaching you. So all of this is with the intent of making you a better person, okay? So that's my goal. Okay, the next one is liking. Okay, now this one is kind of cute. Some of you may have kids, or you may even remember yourself on the, at school at lunch, in elementary school, maybe even high school or middle school, and you're sitting at the table with lunch and you're looking at everybody's lunches, those of you who brought your lunches, and you say, oh, you open up yours and you got, oh, crap, I got another turkey sandwich. Ugh. And your friend over here has the peanut butter jelly, and you want the peanut butter jelly. And so you say to that friend, right, if you swap with me, because I have a turkey sandwich that's really healthy, and you really probably don't really want that peanut butter and jelly, I'll trade sandwiches with you, and you'll be my friend forever. Yeah? You've heard that before, hopefully. This is usually when I get a chuckle from the class. No chuckling? No, okay. Well, we do that. We do that also with friends, all right? So go with me to this party, let's have a blast, and do it because I'm your friend, and I'm fun to be with, and you like me, so let's go, all right? Number 5, and these are not necessarily in order of preference. Number 5 is calling in a debt. Oh, you owe me. You owe me big time. I have helped you move into 2 different apartments in the last, year? And this is my first chance to move out of my family's home, and it's the only time I've ever asked you to help me move, and now you're telling me you don't have time? Oh, come on. You owe me. You owe me big time to help me do this. A lot of you guys use this technique, and it's all over the board, and we use that in all kinds of situations, not just friends, but people do it on the job as well. Oh, you owe me. I covered for you the other day when you called in sick, all right, but I knew where you were, and you didn't have a sick bone in your body, so I covered for you, so now you owe it to cover for me today. Okay. Number 6. Number 6 is what we call altruistic, which is really looking out for the other's best interest. Okay. Now, as a compliance gaining strategy, this is used to ensure that you sometimes say, you know what, I'm going to do this for you because right now this is what you need, and because you need it, and this is in your best interest, I don't need this money right now, so let me loan it to you, right? It's not a problem. I know you've got having trouble making your rent due, and I've got this extra cash, so please, I'm just going to give it to you, and then that's going to enable us to go shopping. Is now you can pay your rent and we can go shopping, okay? Because I really want to go shopping. And if you don't go with me, it's no fun. So please go with me. I'll loan you the money for your rent. That'll free up your cash flow and we can go shopping, okay? That's a compliance gating strategy. And then the last one is appealing to somebody's ego. Oh my gosh, I have to go talk to my professor, my math professor. I am so hesitant to do that. I do my homework, but the homework is always bad. I don't go to the tutoring sessions because the teacher makes me feel like an idiot, but I just got to go get some help. And you're really good at math, so will you please go with me? Go with me, please go with me, please, please. Be my support person when I walk into the office. And then I know that the teacher's going to tell me, to do these extra assignments, these extra things. Can you please help me do these homework? I don't want you to do it for me. I'm not asking you to cheat or plagiarism or any of that stuff. You are so smart in math, and I'm not good. And if you're so good in math, please, can you help me with this? Because I got this big test coming up, and if I don't pass, blah, blah. And I'm good at writing, so I'll help you with writing that big term paper. You hear all the techniques we use? All these techniques. Now, some of you may look back at these and say, whoa, we are a bunch of manipulators, aren't we? Yeah. Look at that list. We are manipulating people to do all kinds of things that we want people to do. We do, at times, however, say, wait a minute, I'm going to resist your tactic or strategy, and I'm going to say, you know what, I know that you have really good my interest in heart. I know you really care about me, and I know you want to go shopping. But right now, it's just not a good idea for me to borrow that money. I need to just take responsibility and pay for my bills, and I'll just go shopping another time. So, I'm sure there's another friend that you can get, or go out with your dad or your mom or somebody. They'll take you shopping. But I need to resist your compliance gaining technique, without saying that, to take care of myself, right? Or to say something, look at, you know what? I know I'm smart in math, but you know what? You need to take responsibility. So you're trying to drag me in to go listen to that teacher read you the riot act, and it's not my problem. You screwed up. You're not going into tutoring. You're not doing what you're supposed to be doing. So you need to face up, face the music, and don't drag me in. Don't drag me into your fight. Don't drag me into your issue. Okay? That's your issue. I'll still help you with your term paper, but you need to go take care of this yourself. It's not my job to tell you, right? So those are part of the resisting types of elements that you still need to bring into play. Okay, hopefully some of you are now hearing some techniques that your friends use with you all the time, and you're starting to say, whoa, that's not real healthy. What my friend or my colleague at work, or even a teacher or what have you, are doing, that's not healthy for me. I need to protect myself. I need to take care of my well-being. And that's when sometimes you have to be attuned to what people are doing and what they're saying and how they're using words and appeals to these things to get you to do what they want you to do. Be careful. Be very careful. See, that's why this class is so good. Because right now, you all are going to go into the weekend, and you're going to have some friends who are going to want to go to a COVID party or something coming up, and you're going to say, no, I don't want to do that. It's just not smart. And then they're going to use one of these tactics on you, and you're going to fall for it like that, or whatever they're going to ask you to do. It could be anything that could be illegal. It could be, lots of theft, those kinds of things. So keep in mind that you are always responsible for yourself, and you can make those choices, okay? So you can make a choice to not go along. Now be careful though, because I don't want you to confuse these strategies and these manipulations, etc., with something called coercion. Coercion is different. Coercion takes you into being a bully, or worse. Coercion means that you are going to cause harm, physical and emotional. Going back into those P's again, okay? Psychological or physical harm. If a friend uses techniques that coerce you for fear of, because now you are fearful of the consequences if you don't comply. At that point, then, that person has crossed the line and they're now using coercion. And there is nothing ethical about that. There is nothing healthy in a relationship that does that. And you think about unhealthy relationships where there are abusers, dysfunctionalism, this is what's happening. Okay, so again, lots of degree programs are saying they want you to take this class so that you can recognize when somebody crosses a line and moves into an area that could be physically and psychologically damaging. Okay. All right, so now I'm going to move into the maxims, all right? And maxims are explained in your textbook, and they start on page 30, 31, 32, etc. Okay, so they go in here. I'm going to just write these on the board, and I want you to think about what they mean. I'm going to give you quick definitions, but I want you to then try to connect them to some things that emotionally you can say, yes, you have experienced them. Now, let's understand what a maxim is. Okay, so what is the definition of a maxim? First, it is a statement that is pretty much regarded by the community that uses the maxim as being true. Okay, sometimes it's obviously, self-evidently, no duh, true. And you'll see that when I write these up here, you're going to say, well, no duh, Miss K. Right, but still, there's more to it than that. And they are accepted by that community, all right, as well as established by the community. Even though there may not be the physical, I drop this pen and gravity is going to make it fall, that we know from science, because communication studies is a social science. But what we can say is that the high degree of probability that something's going to be repeated or have this particular maxim, truth associated with it, gives us understanding about the discipline, all right? So I'm going to put them up here. And again, these are the communication maxims, all right? And they all begin with the phrase, communication is. So the first one is, communication is intentional as well as unintentional. All right? Now you know that. You may intentionally be saying no to somebody, but your body language is saying no. No, no. Right? But unintentionally, you're saying yes, 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 yes. Right? And there's other kinds of examples that your textbook gives. But this is when things are not in concert, usually your body language and your language. Or you say something and you're going, no, I didn't mean it that way. You took it wrong. Really? Okay. So you meant to say one thing, but unintentionally, the receiver of the information, for what all those reasons we talked about in earlier lectures, took the meaning to be different. Now you're in deep shit. Okay. Okay. Communication is both conscious. I have to spell it right. I always have to stop and think about the spelling. Conscious and unconscious. All right. So again, sometimes we are very aware of this. Now, I did an amazing, my colleague said it was amazing, self-disclosure with faculty where I basically laid it all out with all the many mistakes I make. And it was about being an ally and being an ally to people of the LGBTQ plus community, and ally for Black Lives Matter, an ally to the dreamers, et cetera, et cetera. And whereas I am falling short. So on a conscious level, I may do or say all the right things, probably do more. You know, I've got the posters on my bulletin board outside my office, but then unconsciously, I do something else, which means that an inherent bias is actually there. And let me give you an example. I may have given this to you before, but it bears repeating. All right. So consciously, I know that a student asked me to refer to the student as they and them. Did not want to be identified as a specific sex gender. All right. And wanted to be seen as binary, not binary, as being non-gender specific. All right. So consciously, I knew I needed to refer to the person as they and them, but for the life of me, I could not get she and her out of my mind because of her name on the roster, because of her physical appearance. All right. So that is an example of consciously, actually unconsciously, I was still having a bias that was coming through. And what I needed to do, and what I still need to do, and still continue to work on, is to say, no, I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to fall victim to that. I'm going to respect the chosen identity that the student has asked me to do consciously and make it as unconscious as I possibly can. Right? It is irreversible. And you know this. Once you say something, it's out there. Once you post it on Snapchat, it's out there. Once you post it in an email, it's there. There's no taking it back. Okay? Even when it's just verbalized, it was heard. And it can be hurtful. It can be make people angry. You know, whatever it might be. You would love to be able to take it back. You'd love to be able to just rewind. Well, once it's out there, it's out there. And the importance of this is for us to be mindful of what we say before we say it, as well as being mindful up here, okay, versus being mindless if I'm over there. Another maxim is that it's not repeatable. Now you can take lots of photos and videos of an event like a wedding ceremony or, you know, a baptism or a graduation or what have you. But the feeling that the participants in the event have, that they use to talk to themselves and about themselves as well as to the other person, about the other person, you cannot capture that exact feeling, that moment in time ever again. It's fleeting. It happens once. Something may come close to it, but will never be exactly the same. All right? And then we have that communication is guided by rules and norms. So here's a term in your book to explain what it means. Phatic communication. An example of what is a rule or norm is phatic communication. So if you are walking out of Logan Hall and you pass somebody who you know, and that friend of you says hi or waves or, you know, how's it going, that kind of thing. And if you say nothing, that person's going to feel like you dissed them or, well, what happened to you, or, you know, what a bitch, or what have you, okay? It's not normative for you to ignore somebody saying hello to you here in the United States, especially in the South, where you wave at everybody, right? That action is what's known as phatic communication. The expected norm and the expected rule is that you will respond. You know, I love watching the men walk around on campuses or walk around and go, you know, to somebody. You watch the other person walk by and they go, that's it. That's cultural, that's phatic, that's norm, and that's a rule. All right? So that's what we mean by that. And I'm going to end this discussion with something that I said earlier, which is absolutely my all-time favorite thing that I learned. And honestly, if you memorize this, and we're going to talk about this throughout the entire course, you will do yourself such good. Okay? Another maxim was coined by a Dr. Paul Václavic, although spelled with a W, Václavic, back in the 1960s at Stanford University in the Palo Alto group. And what he said, that group, through their observation, is that you cannot not communicate. I cannot not communicate. Even when we're dead, we're communicating that we are dead. Even when we're sleeping, we are communicating with ourselves through brain waves, dreaming, through twitching, through all kinds of conscious and unconscious behaviors that we are communicating. So just as all of these maxims play into it, this all adds up to this statement. So if you think about that, sitting there, right there, in front of me, in this class, saying nothing, all right, you cannot not communicate. And that's it for today. Any questions or comments? I'm going to go ahead and stop the recording. If anybody has